Well. Should Clemson Tiger fans be worried about recruiting? What's the injury status of our Clemson Tigers heading into the Stanford game? All of that and more coming up in tonight's show. What's up, guys? I'm Tiger Paul Craven. Welcome in to another episode of the All In Show. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Hit that like button for us. This is a live video. Help us out with that pesky YouTube algorithm. And as always, the super chat feature is available to you guys. If you guys like what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show, help support us by hitting that super chat feature. It'll obviously support what we do here on the show. And two, it will ensure that your comment and or question attached to that super chat gets read and responded to during the live show. All right, guys, we got a ton to get into tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, what's up, man? Show's starting a little late tonight. I was running behind, so apologies to all the people out there. Thank you guys for being in here anyway and supporting the show. But how you doing tonight, Jordan?
Same old. Just kind of been basking in the glory of the past couple of weeks.
Yes, sir.
Other than somebody hitting my car, which I told you about.
What's going on, NC State fans? They were real upset.
Yeah, tell me about it, man. I've been dealing with insurance companies. It's all fun and games. It's a really fun time. But other than that, man, I'm just happy to be on here for another week. We got a really, jam-packed show, so I don't want to waste any more time. But this is going to be a good one. Stanford is an interesting team. I can't wait to get into it. But we also want to hit on the recruiting and all the stuff you mentioned. So let's dive on in.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick before we get into our planned portion of the show, give a quick shout out to the comment section. You guys are what makes this show what it is. So shout out Dylan Spell for getting in here first tonight. Thank you so much. John Sarian, one of our great moderators. Thank you so much for being here as always. Let's see. And we got Ben Villalobos in here right now. And that's everybody who's got in here and commented so far. Just a reminder, guys, 8 p.m. Wednesday nights, a little bit late tonight, but that's our new time slot for the All-In Show. And also we do the post-game live reactions for each and every Clemson game immediately following the game on Saturdays or whenever the game's played. All right, Jordan, we got a lot to get into tonight. Another night game in the Valley for Clemson. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to kick the show off today with a bit of a recruiting update. There's been some news. There's been some developments as far as the Clemson recruiting goes, and not all of it is in the favor of our Tigers, unfortunately. If everybody remembers, back in August, roughly a month ago, Bryce Davis decommits from the Tigers and then eventually commits to play at Duke. So that was our first decommitment of the class, our first flip of the class, if you will. And at the defensive edge position, if everybody remembers, we had Ari Watford committed. We had Bryce Davis and Isaiah Campbell all committed at the edge position, which was a killer class at that edge position. Now, unfortunately, not only have we lost Bryce Davis to a decommitment, we have also lost Isaiah Campbell. He is officially decommitted from the Tigers, opened up his commitment, and it looks like he will be heading elsewhere to play football. Jordan, questions for you. Should Clemson fans be concerned about these two commitments? Obviously, they're at the same position group, so Clemson's going to have to expand the board. They've already went and offered Christian Ingram and Mekhi Williams-Lee recently, both of those guys. So with those new additions, those new offers out there, how do you feel about those guys? And what are your thoughts on the decommitment? Well, obviously, we've talked about Bryce Davis in the past and kind of some of the reasons, and it's a little more, I guess, understandable why he made the decisions that he made to kind of decommit from Clemson and go to Duke. There was some strong family ties pulling him there. I'm sure some NIL had something to do with it, and all of that stuff we've kind of already covered. But with the addition of Isaiah Campbell decommitting, should Clemson fans be worried? We only have 13 commits in this class. I think 19th overall in the country right now, as far as the ranking. So, we thought, originally earlier in the class, we'd probably get to about 18 to 20 range as far as the committed guys. Here we are in the month of September. We're back down to the number 13. So should we be worried? And if so, why? And if not, why?
Well, worried, I probably not the right word. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I mean, these two decommitments are big and they suck. Me personally, I loved Isaiah Campbell as a prospect. I felt like he was the most ready to along the defensive line, but he was a guy that has been fighting and dealing with other schools in his ears for a while now. I mean, UNC and especially Tennessee, they had long since been trying to get him on a visit. Looks like he's going to take those visits now, and it's sucks to lose him. I will say that the number the 18 to 20 number is more of a guess. It's not always clear with Clemson, like kind of what their target number is. But I think they moved quickly. Christian Ingram especially was a guy that they knew about Isaiah Campbell like a couple of weeks ago. So they pivoted quickly. They had that relationship. Nick Eason with Christian Ingram went ahead and pulled the trigger a few days ago. And then you mentioned Mekhi Williams-Lee out of Atlanta, Georgia. Kind of an undersized defensive tackle, but extremely twitched up. If you go watch his film, he's just flying in the backfield. He plays at Lakeside. That's 5A school in Atlanta. So he's not playing scrubs. So, as far as the pivot goes, I think I'm happy with these two offers. So, and I think both are trending in a really good direction for Clemson. And, I think ultimately that's really exciting. Mekhi Williams-Lee was committed to NC State. So kind of think of it as another win over Dave Doran this week. If you do land his commitment.
The hits keep going, keep coming for Donut Dave. Poor guy.
So, yeah, obviously the defensive line class is not going to be as strong as, on paper as it appeared to be. But again, you still have Ari Watford and Amari Adams, two highly sought after defensive linemen. We're kind of complaining, oh man, we're not going to have four, top 100 defensive line prospects in our class, only going to have two. So, I'm not trying to, sunshine pump or anything like that. Cause again, I hate losing those two prospects in Bryce Davis and Isaiah Campbell. It sucks. But if you didn't have the defensive line coaches that you do and the recruiting pedigree that those two have and the evaluation pedigree that those two have, I'd be a little bit more worried. So, I think it's just kind of the reality of recruiting right now. And, Clemson is going to suffer these every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan, I think you bring up a good point in, the recruiting pedigree and the guys that we have in that room as far as coaches along that defensive line. You think of a Nick Eason, that guy's a recruiting machine. And then you add Chris Rump to the mix, a guy with an NFL pedigree and a proven track record there to kind of attract the defensive linemen. And Clemson really is not – we're not struggling to bring high-level defensive linemen to Clemson. It's kind of been a calling card of Clemson for quite some time now. But with that said, losing Bryce Davis and Isaiah Campbell sucks. That's just the fact of the matter. That was two of the four highest-rated guys we had in the class. It's never good when you lose guys like that. I'm sure some of this has to do with NIL. Some of it may have to do with other things. unforeseen. The true story of it is we'll never know why they decommitted, 100% why they decommitted. You can speculate, NIL, you can speculate, early playing time, you can speculate all sorts of things, right? But at the end of the day, you're never really going to know. It's never good to lose those kind of guys, but to your point, I think we've pivoted well. Got some good offers out there. Start building and cultivating those relationships. Get those guys on campus for games, and see where it goes from there. But I just thought it was worth mentioning. There's obviously a lot of talk out there. Anytime you lose a couple high-profile guys in the span of 1 month, people are going to start asking questions. Fans are going to start not panicking, but start asking questions like, uh-oh, should we be worried? What's going on with recruiting? Why is this happening? So on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we're going to see how this plays out. You still have the offensive line board that's still playing itself out too. So, it's about the guys you get at the end of the day. And that's how it's always been at Clemson. So, it's that's just kind of the reality of where recruiting is right now. You're going to lose even Clemson with how they recruit and how they evaluate and how they, kind of protect themselves as much as possible from these types of situations. It's still going to happen. So, but I don't think it's a sign of anything like, worrisome. It's just kind of the reality of how recruiting goes in the landscape right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. All right, guys, we got 25 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight, showing up, supporting the show. Really do appreciate it. Keep in mind, guys, you can catch us on all of your streaming platforms, anywhere you get your podcast. Search Clemson Live. Check us out there. All our long-form videos, our show, the All-In Show right here that we do every Wednesday at 8 p.m. is on there. Parts of the post-game live and stuff like that. So check us out at Clemson Live on all your favorite audio streaming platforms, anywhere you get your podcasts. Check us out, rate, review there as well. All right, rolling right into the next segment, we're going to talk injuries, Jordan. Clemson's got quite a few injuries that they're dealing with. Like I said last week, I don't think we have any catastrophic injuries as of now, other than the ones that we already know about, guys that are already out for the season, that we've already mentioned before, guys like Kobe McLeod that unfortunately went down, and other guys that went down prior to the season. But we do need to talk about some nagging injuries, two of which kept players out last week. Tyler Brown obviously got held last week with that sprained ankle. Peter Woods got held with the lower leg injury, knee injury, whatever they're calling it. Those guys are still reported as day-to-day, still getting better. We got some unfortunate news out of Adam Randall. We were really excited for him last week, getting his first touchdown as a Tiger, really having, kind of a bounce-back game after, an unfortunate start to the season in Georgia where he racked up a couple penalties early, kind of got benched, kind of got shifted down in the rotation of the receiver, sort of losing his starting spot, but he stayed in it. Mentally, he stayed in it. He kept grinding. He didn't give up. He didn't sit on the bench and pout. And he comes out against NC State and has a pretty big day, caps it off with his very first touchdown as a Tiger. Couldn't have been a better day for him. Unfortunately, breaks his toe, has to have surgery this past Monday to get a screw put in it. Dabo said he expects him to bounce back very quickly, expects him to do great, and hopefully he'll be back by the Virginia game. But some really unfortunate news for him. Colin Sadler injured as well. So what are your thoughts on all these injuries and how they're going to affect the Tigers in this game against Stanford and moving forward?
Yeah, it is unfortunate. You mentioned Adam Randall. It sucks. Obviously, he had a big game this past week, led the team in receiving, got his first receiving touchdown, and he was playing with that broken toe, so that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big one. We'll see kind of how Tyler Brown, works his way back in. Also wanted to mention DeMonte Capehart, who was held out after he only played 10 snaps against App State, and then they took him out. They didn't disclose what injury it was. I assume that he'll be ready to go for Stanford, but you never know. With these types of situations, and I mean. I understand why Clemson goes about doing it this way. I mean, and especially with a guy like DeMonte Capehart, who's been such a centerpiece of your defensive line. You don't want to give Stanford the impression that he won't be playing. So, I mean, that's kind of the reality of where we're at injury wise. Not having Colin Sadler sucks a lot.
Yes.
But, it puts more pressure on Trent Howard. He's kind of that next man up, can kind of play along the line, well, really on the interior. And then Elijah Thurman is probably that seventh guy off the bench as a true freshman. So you're not dealing with a lot of depth here. So, I mean, potentially not having Colin Sadler available is a big deal. So you need Marcus Tate to stay healthy at that left guard spot, and everybody else to be 100% too. So, again, we've talked about it. You don't have a whole lot of functional depth. Despite what Dabo might say, you don't have a whole lot of functional depth on your offensive line. Your starting five is really, really damn good.
Yes.
You want to keep it that way and keep them upright. So we'll kind of see, when Saturday rolls around, whether or not we're going to get some of these guys back.
Yeah, you hope to see a Tyler Brown back. You hope to see a Peter Woods back. You hope that they are, possibly held out of the NC State game just, as to get them another week, get them healthy. Seems like Tyler Brown probably could have gone if they needed him, but obviously they were gonna hold him because of how deep that wide receiver room is. Devontae Capehart, I think that's a bigger deal than maybe any of the others, just because of how he anchors the middle of that defensive line. It might not show up against a team like Stanford, not real good at running the ball, but at the end of the day, you want your best players in there, and hopefully some of these guys work back and get better. Thoughts for Adam? I hate it for a guy like Adam Randall. I mean, it's just a guy whose entire career at Clemson really has been hampered by injuries. Both the knee surgeries he's had and just constantly being injured. And then he has a day like that. And unfortunately he's got to shut it down for a few weeks because he's got to get a screw in his toe. Just unfortunate for a guy like that. You hate to see it. I was kind of hoping that he would kind of use the momentum of the NC State game and kind of run off a couple big games and really gain his confidence and gain his footing and find his place in this wide receiver room and in this offense. But unfortunately, he's going to have to shut it down again, and hate that for him. But hopefully we start getting these guys back. I don't think much of it will show up against Stanford on Saturday. But again, we do need these guys to start getting healthy as the season goes on, because we're going to need each and every one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll see just kind of how all of that shakes out.
All right, guys, we got 42 people in the live chat. 43 people in the live chat right now. Make sure you guys are hitting that like button. It really helps us out. It really gets the video out there to other viewers. So while you're in here, even if you don't like what we're doing on the show, please hit that like button before you step out of here. It would be greatly appreciated. We're also on the road to 6,000 subscribers, guys. And you guys have been great about growing the channel and bringing new people in. So share these videos, share the channel, tell your Clemson buddies about it, tell your college football buddies about it, and spread the love and bring some more people in here so we can chop it up and talk about college football with them as well. Keep in mind, every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Mark Rogers does the College Football Show. So go to the main channel, the Voice of College Football. Check it out Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mark Rogers, the College Football Show. All right, Jordan, time to turn the page. Well, not turn the page quite yet, but put a final bow and give our final thoughts on this NC State game and what we truly saw from the offense, from the defense, the good, the bad, and the indifferent, if you will. Okay, so we'll start obviously on the offensive side of the ball for the Clemson Tigers and what we saw positively. Obviously, for the second game in a row, not the second week in a row, but the second game in a row, Clemson comes out and they start extremely fast, right? I gave the stat, I think, during the post-game live where Cade Klubnik had went 12 for 12 at one point in time in the NC State game, going back to the App State game, right? 12 drives, 12 touchdowns. Absolutely mind-boggling stat. Out of this world, regardless of the competition, that's an insane stat, right? He goes on to have another great game. The offensive looks explosive. He breaks off a 55-yard run. Maffa breaks off a big run, big touchdowns here and there. Antonio Williams had himself a day. Adam Randall had a great day. The offense looked explosive yet again, and the game was pretty much in hand before the first quarter was over, essentially. So what were your thoughts on kind of how that first team offense looked, just coming out there and basically exploding from jump for the second game in a row?
Yeah, just again, another extremely impressive week. I think honestly, this game was, from a Cade Klubnik perspective, it felt like it was even better in a lot of, even though the stats didn't show it, he played better in this game than I think he did even against App State in some ways, because I think against App State, he was throwing to wide open guys a lot of that game. Like, it was a lot of schemed up stuff, but I mean, he knew where to go with the football, and he was decisive, and he was accurate and on time. And, when everything is clicking, that's kind of stat line you can get. But against App State, I mean, I think there were times where he had to make more anticipatory throws, more pre-snap, judgments about where he was going with the ball. And they did a lot of checks and stuff. So I thought that, it was just a continuation of Cade's maturity as far as like his role within the offense. He really is a leader, I think, at this point, and he's one of your best players. And that's, you weren't even able to come close to saying that last year. So I think that, from Cade's perspective, like he showed how much he grew up. And I think against a Power 5 defense, say what you want about the quality of NC State this season, it was good to see that, it translated over. And really impressive with him. Offensive line, continues to play extremely well. That first five, they were dominant up front, blowing NC State off the ball. Much of that first half. Run game was extremely effective. You were 10 yards per rush for a lot of the game. You only had to give Phil Maffa 7 carries, and he had an 100-yard game. I mean, that's pretty good. And Jay Haynes got in there and had a touchdown. That draw, I don't know if you saw the screenshot, the still shot of that draw play of Jay Haynes, but the offensive line literally has NC State's defensive line like 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. It's crazy. The widest open hole I've ever seen. It was textbook. It was beautiful. So. I mean, not much more to say. The receivers continue to play great, and it's a different guy every week. I think that's one of the cool things, is that you've had a different leading receiver each week this year. And so, I mean, it shows the versatility and depth of this group. And, you continue to see flashes of the young guys. They held Wesco, but, TJ Moore got in there and made a big catch on one of probably Cade's best throw of the night, where he was getting of the game. I think it was like 28-7 in the second quarter. It was a 2nd and 10, and they completely whiffed. The offensive line completely whiffs on NC State's defensive end, and Cade gets crushed as he releases that fade route, and it was just a perfect ball. And TJ had stacked his DB, and it was just a really, really nice catch. I just, that kind of stuff, when the play breaks down, has been really good to see that they're still able to make plays. The one where Cade has to avoid a rusher that's unblocked and hits Antonio Williams on a scramble drill.
Yep.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Absolutely.
Because, it's great to see that the offense looks really good when they're on schedule, but even when they're not, they have answers and they get, you have playmakers. Just it feels good, man. So we're really, that's my long spiel, but just really pleased with the offense and the balance and the execution and the play of Cade Klubnik. So,
yeah, absolutely. Look, I know exactly where you're coming from. It's great to see this offense operate consistently and at a really high level. And I think you bring up probably the biggest point that maybe not everybody's talking about. Everybody's giving Cade his flowers and say he's playing great and all of that stuff. But when you truly look at this NC State game and look how even when he was pressured, even when there were free rushers, he's able to manipulate the pocket, still get a good throw off, and turn a kind of a busted, pass pro into a big time play. And he did it several times. He did it. You talk about the one to TJ Moore, the one to Antonio Williams in the end zone. He did it on several different occasions, off schedule throws where he didn't panic in the pocket. He didn't get those happy feet of old that we've seen so many times where he's just around there and his feet are moving a million miles an hour, but he's not really going anywhere. And he gives up a sack or a fumble or throws an interception or makes a bad decision. He didn't do any of that stuff in the NC State game. And Jordan, I don't know if we've mentioned this yet, but we finally had a turnover-free game.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. It's been a long time coming.
What was our tally up to? What last time we tallied this up? Didn't we tally this up last week?
So so the last turnover-free game we had was the 2022 ACC championship game.
There you go.
So that's one. So Orange Bowl, that's one, and then 13 last year, 14, and then it took you 2 more games. So it was a 16-game run of turnovers before you got to a turnover-free game. So that's
not the kind of streak you set out to do as a team, but nonetheless, Clemson did it. 16 consecutive games with a turnover. We finally end that streak. And what better team to do it against, Jordan, than NC State in the Valley? Absolutely obliterated them. And the offense looked great. I can't say enough about the improvement of this offensive line, Jordan. We got to shout out the big boys up front because they just look different, man. And I know this offseason, back in spring, when Dabo Swinney brought on Matt Luke, we were both super excited about it. I never thought we'd hire an offensive line coach the caliber of a Matt Luke, right? But we did, and we were excited about it. But coming into the season, both of us were kind of, limiting the expectations, right? What can you really do in one off season? How much better is this offensive line really going to be? But through 3 games, Jordan, they've answered emphatically that they are head and shoulders above what they were last year. They've yet to give up a sack that was charged to them, the offensive line. Right. Not that Cade hasn't been sacked this year, but charged to the offensive line specifically. The running game has been, outside of Georgia, pretty dominant. They could run whenever they wanted to outside of Georgia, but there's going to be a lot of teams that struggle to run the ball against Georgia, right? Their pass pro looks so much better. Although Cade was hurried and was rushed a few times, and they broke down some pass pro and made some mistakes in the NC State game, they're still miles ahead of where they were last year. And it's really exciting to watch this offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I don't think ever as a Clemson fan, I've been excited to go back and watch the offensive line for Clemson. Even when you had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, back there, it was what it was. You got good play from them, and you got functional play from them, and sometimes you had a good one. 2018 comes to mind, but it was never you never felt like you were just there weren't many games where you felt like the offensive line just completely physically manhandled an opponent, and that's what you have now. I think you have guys that can actually displace defenders and create and get push and create running lanes. Like I could again, that hole that Jay Haynes got on his touchdown run, I could have got. I'm out of shape. I probably could have got 10, 11 yards at least.
I'm trying to tell you, it's wide open, man. That offensive line is grading at a high level. They're moving the defensive line out of the way. The receivers are buying in on the outside. There's downfield blocking. That's what's creating all those explosive plays. It's good to see. There seems to be a cohesion on this offense and a buy-in by every single player out there. And I think that's what's creating this explosiveness in this offense, the confidence that they're walking around with. Not only Cade, but just the entire offense as a whole. They just look confident out there. They look like they know it doesn't matter what the defense does. They're going to go out there. They're going to out-execute them, and they're going to score. And that's just kind of the attitude that the offense has taken on over the first part of the season. And you hope that continues and they continue to grow. Obviously, we don't expect every game to be over by the end of the first quarter. That's probably not even close to realistic, and it's not going to happen for the remainder of the season. But it's good to see Clemson's ability to be explosive, to put the throttle down, and really keep the throttle down for the most part. Now we'll switch gears and talk about that defense. Absolutely bottling up that NC State offense through, pretty much 3 quarters. We covered the fourth quarter a bit in the post-game live, talking about the 3 touchdowns that were given up in the fourth quarter. What's been your assessment of the defense so far? We haven't really seen them have to play a complete game, much like the offense. Been rotating a lot of young guys in over the past 2 games because of the score getting out of hand and trying to develop that quality depth behind those starting 11 on defense. So what's kind of been your assessment of the defense thus far, and then specifically in this NC State game?
Yeah, I mean, defensively, I think they have their moments, and they show, like, I think from a down-to-down basis, I mean, they're still a really, really good defense, but it's just, the lapses are very obvious, and I think that's kind of what you saw against NC State. And really just when you have to get into, dig into your depth a little bit, you don't feel nearly as confident in those guys. And that's kind of the thing that, this team is going to have to figure out and sort of develop over the course of the season. But that's the great thing about having an offense that can score, the way that, this offense seems to be able to, is that you have that luxury now. You don't need the defense to go out there and keep you in ball games. At least against this schedule. I mean, down the line in a, ACC championship, potentially against like a Miami or a playoff situation, you're gonna need your depth to be developed. But NC State, you held their first team offense, and that when the game was really, really mattered, you got stops. But when you did dig into your depth, that was when, NC State started having some success running the ball. When NC State lined up in pistol and ran, stretch plays and outside zone, like they were eating you alive a good bit. CJ Bailey, I mean, again, thought he actually had a pretty admirable performance. He had threw a pick and had a fumble, but he didn't look, rattled out there. And so, how much you credit that to him and how much you credit that to, maybe the defense not playing as well as you would have liked, I don't know. But I think that's kind of the reality with this group. And I talked about kind of some of the issues in the secondary as far as communication and all that. I think that reared its ugly head when you got into your depth. I think your starters are still pretty good, but there's still kind of that learning period for some of the younger guys, especially your younger corners and your younger safeties. So that really has to, be developed as the season goes on. I think the defense is a work in progress. They're functional, when it matters, and they're really, really elite in some areas and they're lacking in others. And so you got to be able to kind of find your level with, some of your weaknesses, and they need to be, more functional when you have to go and deep into your depth chart. So, was not happy watching that fourth quarter. That's for sure.
No. I don't think any fan would be happy watching that fourth quarter. There's no reason to give up 21 points. We talked about specifically that last touchdown, and in my opinion, it just being a lack of effort out there. The one positive that I remember you pointing out in that post-game live video was the coaching on the sideline did not change. Specifically, Nick Eason absolutely destroying the defense on the sideline, because obviously he was not happy with what was happening on the field and the results that were out there. So, but with that said, it's really good to have the luxury to be able to get those second and third team guys out there, to get those depth pieces some real game experience so that they can be ready in the future, whether that be later this season or next season. Eventually the Tigers are going to have to call on these depth pieces. They're going to eventually the twos and threes become your ones, right? So at the end of the day, it's great for Clemson to finally be back to having a luxury of playing depth pieces, right? And emptying the bench, so to speak, right? Getting 90-plus people on the field to play, 100-plus people on the field to play, because in previous seasons that wasn't happening anymore. So it was good to see that. Good to see Clemson back to that. Good to see those depth pieces get out there and unfortunately make some mistakes and make the score look a little bit better for NC State than it really should have been. But at the end of the day, does it really matter that NC State scored 3 garbage time touchdowns? In the end of the day, no, it doesn't matter. But you would like to see the second, third team depth piece guys execute at a little bit higher of a level. But again, they'll get there. They'll continue to develop. And these couple games that they have been able to get in there and play will go a long way in developing that depth.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, we got 42 people in the live chat right now. Make sure you guys are hitting that like button while you're in here. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Help us out. Help us get to 6,000 subscribers. We're on the road to 6,000. Me and Jordan will be back right after a word from the sponsor.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.
All right, guys, you heard Mark there. If you're into gambling, if you're into sports betting, head on over to the Patreon, pay for your subscription, and get some really good inside pick and information from Mark and all of the rest of the guys there that do a really great job. Make sure you guys are supporting all the Voice of College Football channels, including the main channel, again, with Mark Rogers. He is the one that gives us this platform in order to talk about Clemson football and have our all-in show. So go show some love over there and tell them the guys over on the Clemson channel sent you. And that would be greatly appreciated, guys. All right, Jordan, let's go ahead and turn the page. We've talked plenty about NC State. Now it's time to turn the page to this Saturday's matchup against Stanford. They come to town. They are 2-1 on the season. They're coming to the Valley for the very first time, very first season in the ACC. It's going to be a night game in the Valley. It's going to be loud. It's going to be an amazing atmosphere. Homecoming for the Tigers. Some things being canceled and rescheduled due to weather, and hopefully that holds off for the Tigers. But what are your kind of just initial thoughts on the game before we really dive into the specific matchups and how the offense and defense stack up against the Cardinals?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting matchup for Clemson. Without getting into the nitty gritty, but Stanford, on the course of the year, it has been a really intriguing team to watch. Their results have been kind of head scratching in a way in terms of how they played out. Their first game against TCU, they won the turnover battle 1-4 and lost by a touchdown. And they were outgained by almost 200 yards, but they stayed in the game. Cal Poly was what it was. They were the better team. But then this past week against Syracuse, it just, I never felt like in any of in their two games against Power 5 opponents, they really should have been in the game the way that they were.
Yeah.
But man, they're just scrappy, man. And they have, this is not an overly talented football team. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But they have some really, really talented playmakers, and they find a way to get plays whenever they need them. And so I'm really interested to see how Clemson fares against this team, because they do present some interesting. I'm saying interesting a lot, but it really is. They really are kind of an intriguing team. They're going to present Clemson a lot of different looks on both sides of the ball. And so, and they're extremely scrappy. So I'm, and with the weather potentially affecting this game, this game has some opportunity to be a little bit weird as far as the results standpoint. It's not necessarily in the win-loss column, but just kind of how the game plays out.
Yeah, I think you make a couple good points there. Obviously, Stanford doesn't have the talent or anywhere near the talent that Clemson's roster is going to go out there on the field with. They have a couple players here and there that are really good, and they're skilled, and they can really hurt you, and they can make some plays. But outside of a few guys, there's not really a ton on their roster that worries you or scares you or anything like that. I think they've been kind of fortunate in a couple of these games to even be in it. That Syracuse game, I watched a good portion of that game, and that was, somewhat of an ugly game, which seems to be like the MO of Stanford, or of not Stanford, but Syracuse and their stadium. I remember the last game I went to up there when Clemson played, it was kind of an ugly back and forth, 14-17 game. Weird stuff happens up there. It's kind of an interesting place to play. It's more of you're playing in a basketball stadium than you're playing in a football stadium. But they, they squeak out a win there. They didn't play well for a lot of the game. They really struggled to run the ball. Daniel's not really speaking bad about him, but, they really have no downfield threat, no downfield passing game, really. He can make some plays with his legs, and he can hurt you for certain if you let him get outside the pocket. But outside of that, I find it really difficult to find the plays for Stanford in this game against this Clemson defense. Now, we've talked about this Clemson defense, and they have not played a perfect season at all. The linebackers have struggled at times. The defensive line has struggled to get pressure at times, certain points in times of the game. Again, with that second string, the secondary players, the two guys running out there, There's been some communication issues, so it's not like Stanford will just be stonewalled. I think the whole game, I think they'll get some movement and some positive stuff going on offense, but at the end of the day, I just don't see, they can't particularly run the ball well. They don't particularly have a threatening downfield passing game. I just don't see the plays that they'll be able to make against this Clemson defense in order to keep up with what looks like a really explosive Clemson offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. But to give Stanford a lot of credit, like I said, I think they're extremely scrappy, and again, they have, they really lean on their strengths. I think that's kind of, and that's why, this game could get a little bit interesting if you allow it to, because I don't expect them to just lay down.
Right. Yeah.
So I think you're going to have to earn. If you win by a million points, it's because you earned those a million points, and not because not because Stanford just flat out did not care or just came in there expecting to get beat. They play extremely hard. Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to kind of dive on into it because this, like I said, with the weather and kind of how this Stanford team plays, it could be interesting in terms of kind of how it plays out.
All right, let's go ahead and dive on into this Clemson offense versus this Stanford defense. Obviously, Clemson has started out the last two games and been super explosive, pretty much scoring at will in the first half of games and really putting teams away early. What challenges do you kind of see this Stanford defense being able to present to Cade Klubnik and the rest of this offense? And how do we stack up against this Stanford defense?
Yeah, I mean, Stanford defensively, I think one of the things that has helped them in their games has been just their commitment to stopping the run, as you mentioned. I mean, against the two Power 5 opponents they played in TCU and Syracuse, both teams had under 4 yards of carry. They really do dedicate a lot of resources to stopping the run, but they're not overly aggressive in doing it. It's really just a kind of a numbers game and kind of how they kind of play with offensive linemen's protections and communication. They kind of sort of run that. It's not really a 4-2-5 because they kind of have two stand up rush end linebackers, so it's more like a 2-4-5, and they like to play a lot with sending guys, dropping guys into coverage, and it gives a lot of eye candy and a lot for your quarterback and your offensive line as far as communication is concerned. So that's kind of why this Stanford defense has been able to keep them in games a lot of the way, and they've been really good at stopping the run through 3 games at least. And so I think from a Cade standpoint, it's going to be just kind of trusting your eyes and also making a lot of they are not a heavy man team. They don't trust I did not see them play a lot of man in either of their games. It's a lot of zone pressure stuff. So I think it really just is about Cade being patient and his receivers being in communication, finding soft spots in the zone, and delivering the ball on time, which through these past 2 weeks, Cade has been really, really good at. So they don't generate a ton of pressure, but like I said, they can make you uncomfortable by giving you a lot of different looks, a lot of simulated pressures, and stuff like that to kind of just make the quarterback feel uncomfortable, even when they shouldn't be. So this Stanford defense, they're well coached. They're not overly talented. They lost a couple of NFL defensive backs from last year. So they're still kind of trying to replace that. And that's kind of why they've given up a lot of passing yards, as kind of a consequence of their commitment to stopping the run. So, I think there will be plays to be had against this defense, especially on the back end. So it's just about being patient and the receivers, doing their job. And I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Cade has proven over the past couple of weeks that he can be those things, right? He can be patient. He can play within the offense. He can trust his eyes. He can take what the defense is giving him, and he can make the right decisions even when under duress by the defensive line if they bring pressure or they got a free blitz or anything like that. He's shown the ability to stand in there, deliver a proper throw to the right guy, and make the right decision, and it turns into explosive plays. Right. To your point, the back end of this defense is not very good, and with the depth that Clemson has at the wide receiver position and the mismatch of Jake Brenning-Stool and what that'll present to this defense, I think there's a lot of plays to be made in the passing game. And I think Clemson will be able to run the ball against Stanford. I know they've been pretty good against the run, but again, this is going to be the best offensive line that they've faced to this point. And they've yet to face a running back like Phil Maffa. And he's just a guy that runs with a lot of power, but he's got that second gear as well to break off big runs. And obviously we saw what Cade is, capable of doing in the running game with that big 55-yard quarterback run last week. So I think Clemson will be able to, kind of play within their game. The big thing is going to be taking care of the football, right? If this does turn into one of those weather games, Clemson can't go out there and get reckless with the ball and put it on the ground, and Cade can't get caught trying to force things that aren't there. If you have to take that check down and live to play another down, I think that's the only way that you see this defense kind of keep them in the game for any period of time. If Clemson starts going out there, trying to do too much, put the ball on the ground, give them a short field or something like that, outside of that, I don't really see a way that they keep this particularly close or competitive for, a big portion of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it really is just about guys doing their job. I mean, and if obviously weather could affect kind of how they go about game planning and stuff. It depends. But we'll see kind of what the forecast is like. I believe it's only about like a 30% chance of rain at this far out. They said around the time of kickoff, like a 30% chance of showers. So I don't expect it to be like 2015 Notre Dame out there.
Right. Yeah. No hurricane game. It looked like the storm was kind of headed, right up the East Coast essentially, but now it looks like on a lot of the models it's turning, far more west into the interior of the United States. So, as of right now, that's what happened. Who knows? It could turn and direct hit over Clemson, South Carolina, and it could be, a muddy mess, hurricane game 2.0. But as of right now, it doesn't look like it's gonna be like that. So we'll see. Like I said, Cade's just gotta play within the offense, do what he does, do what he's been doing the past couple of weeks, right? Just make the right decisions, make the right reads, trust your eyes, and don't get caught playing hero ball. If you got to throw it away, throw it away. If you got to check it down, check it down. If you got to take a negative play, take the negative play, right, instead of the catastrophic turnover. But to this point in the season, he's proven that he has grown in every single one of those categories and is willing and capable of doing all of those things. So I think this matchup is pretty well in the favor of the Clemson offense. Now let's go ahead and turn the page to the defensive side of the ball for the Tigers. Obviously, this Stanford team, guys, somewhat of a mobile quarterback. You let him get outside, he can definitely hurt you. Pretty good wide receivers or wide receiver, a guy that can he can make plays. And watching that, I watched the Syracuse game last week, and for whatever reason, Syracuse was letting these receivers get behind them on what seemed like every single play. Luckily, Daniels didn't connect with pretty much any of them. He overthrew almost every single one of them. But these dudes were, they had their DB stacked on what seemed like every single play. Obviously didn't connect on any of them or very many of them, but obviously they have some ability there. What's kind of your take on how Clemson's defense stacks up against this offense? What do they do particularly well, and what do you see their avenue of approach with attacking this Clemson defense?
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of hit on it. I mean, watching this Stanford offense, like I said, they really do lean on their strengths. They don't have many of them, but they have a couple that they lean on really well. First and foremost is the quarterback run game with Ashton Daniels. I mean, that's ultimately what he does. That's ultimately what he does best by far. Not much of a drop back passer. He's only averaging about 5.9 yards per attempt on the year. So that's pretty abysmal. Nationally. So, again, they really do lean on their strength, and that is the quarterback run game. Even their traditional run game isn't particularly great.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is, kind of, design, a lot of zone reads. They do run a lot of outside zone, a lot of stretch plays because they don't really trust their offensive line to block, up the middle and on the interior. So it is a lot of, perimeter runs. Just kind of getting Ashton Daniels outside or one of their running backs. Formationally, I think is kind of what makes their offense, somewhat functional. Is they rarely, do 5-man protections. They always have typically always have a tight end in their blocking. Sometimes he'll come across the formation, give a different look. They do a lot of split back stuff, which linebackers, that's on you. You have to be able to understand your keys and be on point in your run fits. Because they do like to show a lot of looks because they kind of have to. They have to give a lot of window dressing because they know, most defenses know they want to run the ball.
Yeah.
They don't really trust their downfield passing game. So ultimately, if you get, I think as long as you keep them off schedule, I think there's a lot of opportunity for this team to get tackles for loss. And, when you do get, longer downs and distances, it really is just about where is Elick Iomanner, their stud wide receiver. Find him, make sure that he's not running free in your defense, and you should be okay.
Yeah.
Their other receiver, Cece, he's all right. But, beyond that, they don't really have a ton of playmakers that you have to worry about. They are not explosive at all in the passing game if it's not a ball being thrown to Iomanner. So it really is about kind of, linebackers being on the linebackers. They're a lot of what they do is going to determine whether or not you have success stopping Stanford's running game because they will, like I said, they will give you a lot of window dressing to make it more difficult, so you're not just keying in on the run because they know that they can't pass in the traditional sense. It's a lot of so linebackers again be on point because they do a lot of RPO stuff as well, so which is also a lot of the linebackers' responsibility as far as taking care of. So this Stanford team, I think, they're really scrappy, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And Ashton Daniels with his legs is extremely dangerous. So you take care of those things and, identify where Elick Iomanner is on the field at all times, you should be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, obviously this matchup on paper is very favorable for the Tigers. I think, again, outside of the things that we kind of already outlined of how Stanford stays in this game, turnovers, being very opportunistic, things like that, I think this game will probably get away from them. They just don't, possess the offensive firepower to really, I think consistently put drives together against this Clemson Tigers team. I'm not saying they don't put a couple drives together and score some points. Obviously, they have Daniels who can hurt them with the quarterback run, get out on the edge, and really test the east to west ability of that linebacker core and tackling an open field and stuff like that. But outside of that, this really is a mismatch for Stanford. They're coming into the Valley. It's a night game. Again, I'm not saying they've never played in a loud, raucous environment, but Death Valley is one of those unique places. And I just don't see them being able to hang around very long with the Tigers.
Yeah. And so, but again, like I said, this Stanford team is extremely scrappy. So, they're going to, they've played above their talent level, I think, through 3 games so far.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's a credit to them and their head coach. Why am I blanking on his name right now? So, but again, this is going to be a tougher challenge than Syracuse or TCU. I mean, you're traveling all the way across the country for the second time in a week, second time in 2 weeks.
Those travel schedules for Stanford and Cal are brutal. I do not envy them. That is not a fun travel schedule to be a part of. But I guess at least you're in a Power 4 conference. You could be the other two that are kind of left hanging at this point. But before we turn the page on the Stanford preview versus our Tigers, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about special teams, how special teams have been so far for the Tigers, and how that may influence the game on Saturday. Jordan, what's your thoughts? Aiden Swanson maybe looked a little bit better against NC State than he did the previous week. What's your thoughts on the special teams and any sort of way it could play into this game?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I thought special teams did really well against NC State. Again, you had some really nice returns. Just giving the offense opportunities and shorter fields, that's something that they did really well. You didn't have to punt a whole lot against NC State, especially in that first half. But yeah, I thought Aiden Swanson was okay. But he still just has not been at the level that he was last season. So, but I think the good thing is you didn't, now that you have an offense that can score, you don't really need him to flip the field all that much.
Right.
Nolan Hooser continuing, hit his, as long as you kick your extra points, we haven't really asked him to make a ton of field goals this season. So
right.
The ones he did were, chip shots. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, eventually we're going to have to find out, if he can hit.
Yeah. Eventually we're going to test his leg on, a 40-plus yard field goal or something. But
yeah,
we haven't as of yet.
Yeah, I haven't had to do that. So, I think that he should be okay in that aspect. Coverage is, kick coverage has been really good. Robert Gunn has been, I think he's been like almost 100% on touchbacks. I don't think I can't remember a return that Clemson's allowed this year. Maybe we did against Georgia. I can't seem to remember a kick return, any sort of kick return at all.
I think everything's been a touchback.
Yeah. So he's got to continue to do that. Robert Gunn continuing to kick, out of the end zone.
Yep.
It's working. Just keep doing it.
Hey, they can't bust one on you if they can't break a big explosive play if you don't give them an opportunity. And he's been probably one of the most consistent kickers with getting touchbacks this season. So
yeah, I mean, really the MO for special teams at Clemson, historically has just been don't lose us the game. So
absolutely
continue to not lose us the game. And
make sure the special team ain't doing too much. Okay?
Yeah, just
kick extra points, punt the ball every now and then, and avoid the catastrophic play. No more special teams trick plays. Let's stay away from them. All right, guys, we got 41 people in here right now. Thank you guys so much for showing up to the show. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys are sharing these videos, letting your college football friends, letting your Clemson friends know about the show that we have going on. Again, we do this show every Wednesday, 8 p.m. We also do a live post-game reaction to every single Clemson game immediately following the game. So make sure you guys are subscribe to the show so you don't miss any of our live shows and our live content. All right, Jordan, the time has come. We've kind of broken down the game. We've talked about the matchup. We've kind of given our input on how Clemson stacks up against this Stanford team and vice versa. Now it's time to do some picks against the spread and give our score prediction on the game. So this game opened up as Clemson Clemson minus 22, so a 22-point favorite. It is currently 21.5 in favor of our Tigers. The over-under is 57.5. So what are your thoughts? You going over the 21.5? You going under the 21.5? And then you can give your score prediction.
Okay. As far as the point total is concerned, I'm gonna go over.
Over the point total. So point total was 57.5.
57.5. Yeah, I'll go over.
Yeah, I would as well.
And this is assuming that we get a clean environment, relatively weather, fine weather day. Obviously that can muck things up, but I'm gonna go over just because this defense has to show that when it gets into its depth, it can play and get stops. And I expect Ashton Daniels to give them some issues because they just that's just kind of been what it is this year. And I mean, really, this is the first true running. This is the first true running threat that you've played this year. CJ Bailey was, he ran a good bit, but they don't do as much design stuff with him. And, a lot of what they did was drop back passing, and they leaned on their traditional run game. With Stanford, the quarterback run game is the centerpiece of their offense.
Well, I mean, he's their leading rusher. So
right. Yeah, he is. Yeah, literally, he is their leading rusher.
He's their leading rusher.
So, that definitely makes things a little bit more interesting. And this, your linebacker play, as underwhelmed as I've been with it, they're going to have to show me that they can pass this test. So I think Stanford is going to get some plays, running the football. I think Ashton Daniels is going to get outside at times.
He's got. I'll give you a stat real quick. He's got more rushing attempts than Phil Maffa.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. that is pretty crazy. So, as far as that's concerned, I do think that Stanford will. I'm feeling kind of the 2 to 3 touchdown range for Stanford, I think, and so that's why I'm going over the point total because I do think Clemson is going to score a good bit as well. So, that's kind of where I'm feeling. And then against the spread, I like Clemson. This will be my first time this year. Well, actually, I picked Clemson to beat Georgia outright. So technically, this isn't my first time picking them to cover. But I'm going to pick Clemson and the points. And my final score, I like 45-17. I'm not going to pick Clemson to get into the 50s again, just because that's just regression to the mean sometimes happens, and it's a lot to ask to have for an offense to execute at the level that they have, especially in the first half, 3 weeks in a row. So unfortunately, we're going to have a down game this year. This game, y'all, and only score 45.
Yeah,
I'm feeling a 45-17 victory for Clemson, and on to Florida State, hopefully.
Absolutely. On to Florida State, healthy and ready to roll. I, too, will go over the point total of 57.5 for this game. I think it goes over that point total. I am going to pick Clemson for the second time this season to cover the spread. The first time I picked them was obviously the Georgia game to cover the spread, and that did not work out very well at all. But I got a point. I got a score of 45-20. So Clemson gets the job done, 45 to 20 versus the Stanford Cardinals. That's how I see it going. Clemson gets a 25-point victory and covers that 21.5-point spread that is currently out there.
All right. Well, I think that's the second week in a row. We were 3 points off from picking the exact same score again for the second week.
We were dead on last week
Yeah.
with our score prediction, and this week we're 3 points off. I had the 45-20 on there in my notes, and you had 45-17. So we're keeping it pretty close somehow this year. We're on the same wavelength with our score predictions. So we'll see if we can keep that going throughout the year. All right, guys, we got one more segment in the books before we turn the show over to you guys. We got 51 people in the live chat. Make sure you guys are hitting that like button, hit that subscribe button if you have not already. As you guys know, at the end of the planned portion of the show, me and Jordan turn the show over to the live comment section and the live audience. So go ahead and get your comments, get your questions in there, throw your super chat feed in there. Ask us questions. We are going to do the BYOG or sales segment quickly, and then we are going to turn it over to you guys, chop it up with you guys for a little bit, and then get out of here and get ready for this Saturday's game in Death Valley versus the Stanford Cardinals. So, Jordan, without further ado, the most popular segment on this show by far, BYOG or sell. I'll start it off tonight. We'll do a couple back and forth, and then we'll see if the comment section has any of their own BYOG or sells for us to read, and then we will transition to regular questions after that. I'm gonna do a Phil Maffa one. So BYOG or sell. Phil Maffa goes over 100 yards for the third game in a row.
Oh. Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. BYOG. Yeah, I do think this is the best offensive line that Stanford has faced by a good bit, for sure. And that combined with Phil Maffa, I think that, they won't be able to necessarily dedicate as many resources to the run as they typically do. Unless they're perfectly fine with getting beat over the top, because then otherwise, this offense has shown they can do it. So, I think we'll just keep it rolling, BYOG, and we'll get him over because you've been able to break a lot of explosive run plays.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm banking on is an explosive run or two, but I'll take it. I'll take it until proven otherwise. BYOG, Phil Maffa going over 100 yards for the third game in a row.
Yep. All right. BYOG or sell. What was I had it in my head and then I lost it. A different player has led Clemson in receiving every single week. This week, BYOG or sell. It's Jake Brenningstool is your leading receiver.
Ooh. You know what? I will buy that. I'll go BYOG. He's due for a breakout game. He's had some flashes here or there, but he hasn't had that true breakout game yet this season. I think our boy Brenningstool's due, so I will go ahead and buy that. I think he's a matchup nightmare and could create some problems for this Stanford defense. Good luck to the linebackers or the safeties trying to guard him.
All right, you're up.
All right, BYOG or sell. Clemson will score 3 or more touchdowns in the first quarter.
First quarter.
before the clock hits 0 on the first quarter. They got to have a minimum of 21 points on the board.
Ugh.
That's a big ask.
It is for the third week in a row. I'm going to
Third
sell.
week in a row.
I'm going to sell because Stanford, they don't play with an extremely fast pace, and they're not. I mean, in the games against NC State, you benefited from a couple turnovers.
Yep.
I don't. And Stanford, they don't turn the ball over a ton. So they do play a slower pace. So I'm gonna say sell.
All right. I will do the same. I will sell on that. I don't think we do it for a third week in a row.
Yeah, they are not going to want to pass if they don't have to, and
No,
obviously
they know their best bet is to try to slow the game down.
Yeah.
So they're going to try to limit possessions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do if I was them. So, yeah.
All right. BYOG or sell. Clemson holds Stanford to under 100 rushing yards as a team.
Clemson holds Stanford to 100 rushing yards as a team. I'm going to sell. I just think they're going to, I think Daniels will have a little bit of success kind of operating on broken plays and obviously the design QB run. This defense has shown somewhat of a vulnerability. If you can get out on the edge on them, you can bust or break off some bigger runs if you can get outside of that defensive end contain. They have shown, some vulnerability there this year. So I will sell on that.
All right. We want to do one more round or?
I think we can get to the comment section.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we've done 2 apiece. So go ahead and kick it to the comment section. See if they got a couple BYOG or sell, and then we'll just go ahead and transition to regular questions after that.
All right, let's do it. Let's see what y'all got. Jay with a BYOG or sell. My favorite blocker, Olsen Pat Henry, gets a catch against Stanford. I will buy or BYOG.
Yeah, I'll buy that. Shout out Olsen Pat Henry.
Yeah,
he's been playing amazing this year.
And I think they're going to want to reward him. I mean, and they talked, Dabo specifically talked about him and kind of what his motivation was for, becoming a better blocker. It was just, being on the sideline and not playing. He didn't like being on the sideline and not playing. So he said, all right, I'm going to be a blocker, become a better blocker. And that's what he did. Because that was not his game coming in. He was more of he was definitely a receiving, type of tight end. That's what he was in high school. Like he basically was a receiver out there.
Probably closer to a receiver than he was a true tight end.
Yeah. And so he's worked on it and developed himself really well. And now he's become one of the more underrated parts of, why this offense has been successful. I think they're going to want to reward him, and they're going to, they've set up a lot of stuff. They could do a lot of creative things with some of the looks that, he's given them, in the run game on tape that they can play with. So, he comes across the formation and then, instead of like he's about to block and then he just kind of sneaks up the seam or something. I could totally see something like that happen.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, I think I'm a BYOG because I think they're going to want to get him that opportunity. John, BYOG or sell. Kate has another over 90 QBR game. I'm going to sell.
I'm selling. That's tough, man.
That's just so hard, man.
There's a reason it's a big deal that he turned into back-to-back 99 QBRs. Yeah. That's so difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. It's one of those things where like eventually it has to end, right? So, I don't know that he does it again for a third week in a row. That would be, hey, if he does, I'm happy to be wrong, but I would sell.
Dylan Spell, BYOG or sell. Antonio Williams will have 2 passing touchdowns in the first half. I mean, that's been it was a good bet yesterday, not yesterday, last week.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Dang.
That's a tough one. I'm gonna sell just for numbers, from a numbers probability standpoint, but it would not surprise me because he's certainly been Kate's favorite target.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me because we do have some injuries kind of creeping up in that room. Adam Randall's out now. How healthy is Tyler Brown going to be in this game? I think I'm still going to sell, but it wouldn't surprise me if he had 2 passing touchdowns because, he is one of Cade's favorite targets to kind of look for, especially when things are breaking down.
John Sarian, BYOG or sell, the non-Clemson one. He says Bama pulls off the win. I'm gonna BYOG.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think they get it done?
Why not? I mean, I'm just going off. I know Saban is not there anymore, but I don't know. It just. I don't know, man. It just feels like they're going to have something for Georgia. I just, and they have, as good as Georgia is, like they are, they seem to, they've shown a wide degree of variance in their results so far. So,
right.
And they've, if you really think about it, they've only played like one really good half of football, and that was the second half against Clemson. So, I don't know. We'll see. But I think Kalen DeBoer, I mean, he has that offense. They're leaning on a lot of young guys as far as the skill positions, but they're making plays. That Ryan Williams kid, I think he's still 17. I think he turns 18 in like a month or two. Like one of the best freshman receivers in the country. Jalen Milroe, he's Jalen Milroe. So I mean, I don't know.
I'll sell. I think Georgia gets it done. But you almost convinced me. You almost have. But I'll be a contrarian and I'll go sell on that. We'll see.
And it's nice picking against Bama and that being a hot take now. I like that.
Yeah.
So it's they're the underdog for once. When's the last time Bama's been a home underdog?
You'd probably have to go way back.
Because they were even when they played LSU at home back in 2019. I think they were a slight favorite. I don't think LSU was favored in that game.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So that's probably the best team that's played. When Texas came into town, Texas wasn't favored.
They weren't favored.
So I don't know.
It's been a long time.
It's had to have been since Saban's first year because I can't imagine another year where they were a home underdog.
Yeah, I can't see it, but I mean, maybe there was a game somewhere, but I mean, it's hard to imagine Bama during Saban's run being a home underdog.
Yeah. It would have had to have been his first year when they weren't very good.
Yeah, maybe his first year, or maybe those first couple years, there was a game here or there, but not very often, and probably not the past decade.
Yeah,
they haven't been a home dog.
David Lowry, BYOG or sell. Stellato catches a touchdown. I'm going to be BYOG. I think he's due. He plays too much,
right? I mean, we've been spreading the ball around really well. Adam Randall got his touchdown last week, so why not let Troy Stellato get his this week?
I think he's due. I mean,
and
even
Cade's done a
Cole
really
Turner
good
has a
job.
touchdown. Yeah, Troy Stalato's due, I think.
Yeah, Cade's done a really good job of kind of spreading the low, spreading the ball around. I know a lot of that scheme as well, but Clemson's really spreading the ball around this year and divvying up the touches. So, yeah, I mean he's got to get one here, one of these games. So why not this Saturday?
Kuzi, my boy. Oh, and you know what? We were supposed to. I completely forgot about his super chat. I'm so glad that you stayed in the comment section. Kuzi with the $5 super chat. He sent it a while ago, but I was going to wait till we got to the next segment, and then I completely slipped my mind. He says, "Pookie JoJo mullet." Wait, hold on. Pookie JoJo mullet Cade is different. I'm not saying that hashtag. I don't know if it's gonna. I don't know if we're gonna get in trouble.
We're not saying that on this show. Everybody can read it in the comments section. So
yeah, y'all know what it says. But yeah, I mean that mullet is doing wonders. He better not cut it until they lose.
Yeah, no, he's got to keep the flow. Cade with the flow is definitely a different Cade. So
yeah,
we'll take him. Appreciate the support.
Yep. And he had a BYOG or sell, weather permitting, Cade over 2.5 passing touchdowns. BYOG.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
I like 3.
I'll buy that all day.
All right. I think that's going to do it for the BYOG or sell questions.
All right.
Let's kind of see what else you guys are talking about. Hard Take says, "Man, it killed me when Dabo called Cole Turner Forrest Gump." Yeah, I saw somebody make a Twitter post. It might have been Larry Williams, and it had Cole's touchdown, and then Forrest Gump running right next to it. It was pretty funny. Yeah,
that's funny.
Jay says, "With Randall and TB slowly coming." That might be okay. That is probably a response to another. BYG or sell. Dylan says, if UGA blows past Bama, that looks good for us. Yeah, absolutely. Well, don't know if it looks good for us, but it's definitely not. It would definitely make us. It would make things like feel better, I guess, because you feel like you could have been more, a lot more competitive in that game, and a lot of it was just stuff you didn't do well. I mean, as good as Georgia was, I mean, you had there were plays to be had that you flat out negated by yourself, by not lining up correctly, false starts, just simple procedural stuff that negated big plays and potential big plays. So
the first play of the game was going to be a big play.
Yep. The one truly awful throw Cade had all night, like that should have been an easy completion, and he just didn't hit it. Still his worst throw of the year.
And like I said, you can never play the what if game, and Georgia very well could have still ended up, completely blowing the doors off of Clemson like they did in the second half. But that first drive would have certainly been different had you hit that play. You come out first play, hit a 20-plus yard swing pass to Phil Maffa, get a first down. Who knows how that first drive ends up. Again, you probably still lose the game, but it might have looked a whole lot differently than how it played out, if you hit
that. Jay asked a good question. He says, have teams been getting the ball out quicker this year? Seems like the sacks on CJ Bailey were some of the first havoc plays we've seen in the backfield. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just watching how teams have played you, they have been making a concerted effort. App State absolutely did. They were running like a heavy set.
Yeah, it was a 1.9.
Yeah,
second drop,
and national average is about 2.5.
Yeah,
so. That's a pretty significant 0.6. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a pretty significant difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And even Wes Goodwin, when he was interviewed after the App State game, spoke about that and said that they obviously purposefully, were getting the ball out super quick to nullify Clemson's pass rush. They weren't going to sit back there and let their guy drop back and get, completely destroyed by that Clemson defensive line all game. So it was obviously game plan specifically for that App State game to get the ball out extremely quick to negate that Clemson pass rush.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, it has made it difficult as far as the production standpoint it has been. But, I mean, there are things they could be doing better as far as getting pressure. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of that is how teams have game planned against you. And, credit to them. They're like, we're not going to let them overwhelm, we're not going to let them, get sacks and completely get us off schedule. I mean, that's what I would do because obviously, I mean, your secondary is still kind of green, and
Absolutely.
they're just you take your chances against them over doing your traditional drop back passing game and hoping your offensive line can give you enough time to deliver a good ball downfield. Like that's just I mean, if I'm picking my poison, I'm certainly picking the first one, not the latter. So
yeah, yep. Absolutely. Look. It may not be showing up on the stat sheet by quarterback pressures and sacks, but if you're forcing a team to change their game plan to get the ball off in 1.9 seconds, that's already limiting what they can do as far as route concepts and limiting their down the field passing game.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing. You haven't given up a lot of like just big over the. Yeah, that's why. I mean, you haven't given up a lot of like over the top stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it, a lot of the big plays you've given up have been, schemed up like run after catch and kind of manipulating the linebacker and swing routes and wheels and rail routes and stuff like that. But like you have not just been burned over the top because teams just don't think they can protect long enough to create those plays. So, but that's just part of the game plan. And but App State's probably the biggest example of that because they were terrified of getting sacks. John says the Dabo won't let Riley call plays. Clan is even more convinced that was the case after the last 2 games explosion. Riley is finally calling the plays. Yeah. I've seen that a lot. It's at this point I've stopped trying to dispel the narrative. People are going to believe what they want.
That's right. At the end of the day, people are going to believe what they're going to believe no matter what. Look, it is what it is. Yeah. If you think you could just magically switch play callers in the middle of a season and the offense looks like that, hey, okay. Yeah. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe.
And I do want to say that, and I feel like I've mentioned it before on this show, but it is something that, I think just some of the fan base just refuses to think about is that, they want to believe that, Garrett Riley was just this shiny new toy coming in and he was just a perfectly polished as a coach himself.
Right.
And that, anything that went wrong it had to be somebody else's fault. And it had to be Dabo meddling with the offense, or you drum up these explanations. But the reality is like that we don't really talk about is that this is Garrett Riley's first job as an offensive coordinator outside of the guidance of Sonny Dykes. Like he himself probably had to go through some growth as a play caller, and in last year there was a lot. I think it muddied things because you combine that with the play calling, not the play calling, but the personnel issues and the injuries and Cade's inexperience hampering what you could do. So I feel like people just thought that, oh man, it must be Dabo, meddling with the offense and not letting Riley, call what he wants to call, and that's never been the case. Like just flat out has never been the case. From people who are in the program and are privy to that kind of information. Never been Dabo, messing with the offense that made the, that caused all the struggles. It's been a combination of things, but it's not that. So,
I mean, didn't people used to try to trash talk Dabo because he's not an X's and O's guy, he's in a CEO? And
yeah, that's what I don't. That's what I don't understand.
But now suddenly the offense is struggling and he's calling plays. Like,
yeah, he's all of a sudden he's Jimbo Fisher just running. You know
what I'm saying?
I don't know.
I don't know where it comes from. Look, at the end of the day, was Garrett Riley's first season at Clemson what any of us thought it would be? Absolutely not. I'm sure it's not what he thought it was going to be. But at the end of the day, guess what? He was calling plays. Every single one of them. He didn't come to Clemson and not be the offensive coordinator. And I know everybody points to that interview where Dabo's like, we didn't bring Garrett Riley here to run his offense. We brought him here to run the Clemson offense. Dabo's going to say stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
It's the Clemson offense because he's coaching at Clemson. But it's Garrett Riley's scheme. It's Garrett Riley's plays. It's Garrett Riley's terminology. So you want to call it the Clemson offense? Okay.
Right.
But Garrett Riley's had his hands on the controls of this offense since the day he walked on Clemson's campus. It just took a lot longer than all of us thought it would to actually look like what we thought it would look like.
Right.
Now it finally is. So it's not that he suddenly started calling plays 2 weeks ago. I can assure you that.
Yeah.
That's not the not that Dabo doesn't have any input or anything like that, but Garrett Riley's calling the plays. He's scheming it up. It's 100% his.
Absolutely. Hard takes his PSA. I would like to thank Tyler from Spartanburg one more time for his job as a motivational speaker last year, leading to a great hire at the O-line coach and his motivational speaking skills. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your service, Tyler.
Shout out, Tyler.
Dylan asks, is Clemson accurately ranked in the AP poll right now? We dropped significantly after that UGA loss, and it seems we should be higher. We talked about it last week. Like, I mean, I don't really pay too much attention to Clemson's AP poll rank, but I mean, if you want my opinion, like I don't think there's 16 teams better than Clemson.
Right.
I just don't.
I don't either. But like you were saying, like, does it really matter? Not really. Clemson just needs to focus on winning every game, take care of business, go to the ACC championship, win the ACC championship, and then you got an automatic bid to the playoff regardless of where the AP poll or the college football playoff poll at that point has you ranked. Regardless of what your ranking is, you're going to be a top 4 team and you're going to get a bye.
Right.
So focus on achieving that goal and everything else will take care of itself. But no, I don't think Clemson is the 17th best team in the country right now. I think they're significantly better than that. But they'll slowly climb as they win and as they continue to play well. If they continue to play well, if they continue to keep handling lesser teams like they have been, they'll slowly move up as the season goes.
Yep. John says college football Clemson haters are really dumping on Trevor and Deshaun this year. I don't watch NFL, but it sounds bad. Yeah, it's been rough.
It's been really bad.
It's been pretty rough. So, I mean, again, I don't think it's with Deshaun. I have not been. He doesn't seem like the same player. I think there's still hope for Trevor, but man, their offensive line is horrendous. Like bottom 2 or 3 in the league, and the weapons that they got have not. I mean, Brian Thomas is he's a rookie. He's played well. I mean, I'm a Titans fan, so I don't feel that bad for the Jaguars. I'm just frustrated that they're wasting Trevor's talent.
Yeah.
But it's pretty rough, man. The Browns and Jags have not been very good, and Trevor and Deshaun themselves have not played particularly well.
Yeah.
No,
they're not playing good. Deshaun, I mean, I hate to say it, I don't think he's ever going to regain anything close to, what he was in Houston or what he was at Clemson. I think that ship is long sailed, unfortunately. And then Trevor, I don't know. I mean, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've never really done anything for a reason. It's tough when but
they're a poorly run franchise, and they've
you get drafted by. I mean, he's got a good head coach, in Doug Peterson, but you talked about it. The offensive line's terrible. The weapons aren't up to the standard that they were last year. They let Calvin Ridley walk out the door. They bring in Gabe Davis this year from Buffalo. Hasn't really worked out how it was supposed to. So it's frustrating to watch as a Clemson fan because I know Trevor Lawrence can be much better than that in the NFL if put in the right situation. But what are you going to do?
Yep.
But he's far too talented. He'll get, even if it doesn't work out in Jacksonville, he'll get another opportunity somewhere.
Yeah, I think so too.
He's far too physically talented. There's another NFL team that'll take a chance on him.
Absolutely. Jay asks, in your opinions, what are the top 3 position groups so far this season? That's a good question. Number 1, I'm going to go with quarterback. I think. I just so far, I've never felt like Cade was the reason. Like, I mean, even in the Georgia game, I don't feel like Cade was the reason you were struggling. So, and just his play, through 3 weeks overall has just been really, really good and better than we've seen in a while. So I'm gonna go quarterback number 1. Although you said position group, so it's probably kind of cheating because I'm kind of ignoring Vizina and Pierman, who, I mean, it's been what it was. Vizina's had a couple scoring drives, but Cade's play right now. I'm gonna just cheat and give him the number 1 spot. Number 2, I think the defensive line, your defensive tackles in particular, they're really, really good. Teams aren't running down your throat for a reason. They are trying to get to the outside, and everything is on the perimeter. That's what has been a consistent trend for 3 weeks. So defensive tackle, and then third, I'm gonna go wide receiver. Your wide receivers have been it's kind of a tie. It's kind of a tie between. I kind of just want to group wide receiver and tight end together because you've gotten really good play out of Jake Brenningstool and Olsen Pat Henry has been a fantastic blocker for you, even though he's not making plays in the passing game. I mean, really, I think you're. I don't know. No, you know what? No, scratch that. I'll go with offensive line. I'll go with offensive line third. I don't know why I completely blanked on them, but offensive line. And honestly, I might flip. No, I'll stick with defensive line, and offensive line is 2 and 3. So
I'll go. My top 3 would be offensive line, defensive tackle, and quarterback. Those are my top 3 in that order. I think the defensive tackle group is better than our offensive line, but taking into account what they were last year and what they are this year, in my opinion, for my list, that vaults them to number 1 just by the jump and improvement. So I'll go OL, defensive tackles, quarterback.
I like it. And
a lot of honorable mentions.
Next off the list would be wide receiver and tight end.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of hard because your running backs have. Phil Moffitt's been really good.
Yeah, Phil Moffitt's had a great season to this point. So, like I said, there's a ton of honorable mentions, but I'll go with those 3.
Yeah. that one was more difficult than I thought. I went into it. I started talking, and I was like, oh wait, nope, got to think about it more. And it's just strange to say that the majority, like your top five, like if you wanted to expand it out to like the top five, like your best groups are mostly on offense. Just weird to say.
No one would have thought that heading into the season. Certainly not us.
Yeah. Absolutely. I did not have that on my bingo card.
No.
I mean, I believed in the potential of the wide receiver room. Was still holding out on Cade and the offensive line. So it's like, but they've exceeded expectations.
Yeah, I mean, we thought the offensive line would be improved, but really didn't know how much.
Yeah.
We were hoping Cade could just kind of, limit the catastrophic plays, but he's flipped a complete 180.
Yeah, I mean, he's been more than a game manager in the traditional sense. He's been a star for you.
He's making the right reads. He's making the right throws. He's operating at a very high level right now. You can see the confidence.
Yep.
Big question for me for Cade right now is how does he handle that adversity when it comes?
Right.
Because inevitably it's going to come this season.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have a bad quarter or two or a bad game, whatever the case may be. How does he handle that adversity? I think he'll do very well because if he made it through last season and that didn't completely destroy his confidence with, not only, just how last season worked out, but some of the outside noise. If he could go through that, I think he can last through a bad quarter or two or a bad game this year without letting it affect him.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna do a couple more because we did start late, so I don't want to hit the 2-hour mark.
Absolutely.
Talking about Trevor, did not look great. John, BYOG or Sell, there are more opt-outs for NIL coming this year. 3 so far, 2 from UNLV, UNLV, and 1 from USC. Yeah, that's an easy BYOG. It seems like that's kind of the UNLV situation is really crazy, but and then the Bear Alexander thing that doesn't surprise me with kind of how people in this camp and how his recruitment played out.
This is the new sitting out of bowl games. You know what I'm saying? You remember when sitting out of bowl games was
the worst thing that was happening in college football.
And then when it happened, everybody was like, "What in the world?" And now it's just like a widely accepted thing that players sit out of bowl games.
And now the new thing is sitting out in the middle of the season in redshirt.
Here's the new sitting out of bowl games. It's a big deal right now, and there's a lot of college football fans that are up in arms and this is ridiculous. These kids are literally quitting on their teams mid-season. Believe me, this will come. This is the first of many, and it will get worse and worse every single season from now until whenever.
I think it'll happen until we finally figure out revenue sharing.
Right. Until the revenue sharing happens and players are kind of under contract, so to speak, and they have a salary, so to speak, and maybe you start tying NIL to, playing time and, that sort of stuff. I think it becomes a lot easier to manage some of these things when you have revenue sharing and you can kind of not lock players in, but, it becomes more of a mutual give and take, right? You're getting this TV revenue sharing money and we expect you to play, right? Type of thing. So I think that may solve some of it, but you're going to see a lot more of this, I think, until college football ends up where it's going to end up. And how close we are to that, I have no idea. But as a college football fan, I hate seeing it. I mean, a guy just a starting quarterback up and leaving 3 games into a season. Like, that's wild. Like, if it was like, the third string guy who wasn't getting on the field and, didn't like it, you'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But now we got starting quarterbacks walking away from teams 3 games into the season. That's crazy, man.
It is, man.
What's going to be the first major program where it happens? That's the question.
Well, I mean, I get USC technically counts.
Well, USC, yeah. So,
but national. I never viewed USC this season as a national championship contender. Like, I wonder when it I think they're a playoff contender. Like, I think they're in the mix for the Big Ten.
To a team that's vying for a playoff position,
like one of the favorites, like an Ohio State, Georgia, Texas type team. So
I think it's a matter of time. And it's crazy. It's crazy to even think that, but I really do think it's just a matter of time before it happens.
John asks, "Are you taking Louisville or ND?" I'm. You know what? I'm going to take Notre Dame because I think they've just been so up and down. It's like they follow one mediocre performance with a dominant performance. Like this past week, they only scored 28 on Miami of Ohio. I don't know. Louisville, I'm still not totally bought it. Like, they've looked good, but again, it's just we have not seen they've not played a really competent team yet. So I don't know. When people pick, when Notre Dame has, just under Marcus Freeman, when Notre Dame has played poorly and had a head scratching loss, they've always followed it up with kind of a bounce back performance. They did it when they lost to Northern Illinois. They put up 66 on Purdue, and then they this past week only 28 on Miami of Ohio. Yeah, they're kind of a up and down team. So something tells me. I mean, they're at home, so I think it's going to be a close game. But I think they're figuring some things out with Riley Leonard as far as what he can and can't do in that offense, and so I'm going to take Notre Dame and. Well, I think that the stat was that they've won like 18 consecutive home games against ACC opponents. They used to have a long winning streak until they lost to Louisville last year against ACC opponents in the regular season, I should say.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna take Notre Dame, even though it's probably the unpopular pick. People are probably like Louisville to win because, just Notre Dame being overrated and all that. That's just always a fun narrative that people like to go with.
Absolutely.
Brandon with a really good question. He says, who do y'all think is the biggest upset risk other than Louisville? Pitt has looked really good so far. Man, I mean, there's really not a whole lot of great options here. It's really Pitt or South Carolina. I mean, those on paper through 4 games have looked the best out of the rest of the teams on your schedule.
Yeah, I mean, because Virginia Tech hasn't looked good.
No.
Florida State looks terrible. Wake Forest is not good. Virginia's not good. Just Louisville, Pitt, South Carolina.
Yeah. That's what I think. All right. I think that's going to do it for tonight. That is not the right banner. We're professionals, I promise.
Absolutely. 100% professionals. And don't you forget it. Just kidding. All right, guys. We got 34 people still hanging out with us in the live chat. If you have not already, and I don't know why you wouldn't have, but hit that like button on your way out. It really helps out the show, helps us out with that pesky YouTube algorithm, gets our videos out there to more people. Also, share the videos. Bring your college football friends, bring your college football buddies, whether they be Clemson fans or any other fans. We welcome them in here to the All In Show. Don't forget to check out our post-game live immediately following the Clemson-Stanford game. Kicks off 7 p.m. in the Valley. So The show will roughly be at 11:30-ish, depending on the ending of the show or the ending of the game. Once the game ends, obviously give us 5-10 minutes to kind of get the stream spun up and get ready, and then we'll be right on here giving you guys our instant reaction to the game. Wish you guys well. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week. And we'll see you on Saturday.
Yes, we will.
Till then, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. Go Tigers.